Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today at the European Education Leadership Week. I'm Sarah So. I'm representing SIRIUS Network, which is a policy network on migrant education. And I'm really happy to be here today moderating this session with my colleagues, Henrike, Rory, and Michelle. And the topic of our session is international migrant teachers and the potential for transformation of school. And of course, as we are all really aware about, mobility is an essential part of the European Union for labor market, in the economical sphere, are also as the identity of the union. However, when it comes to international migrant teachers who are qualified and have a lot of experience and want to continue with the profession in the European Union, we see that they have to face lots of barriers. These barriers are related to their requalification here, the long assessment process, the long bureaucratic procedures that they have to face, and overall a lot of challenges that might prevent them in the end to become teachers, and that in a way it says that systems don't believe in them, or that they don't even think they are worth it of being teaching in our systems. And even though there are some practices and some progress at the EU level for requalification of migrant teachers, we see that these practices are quite isolated, and they don't have the aim of being regularized or reproduced at the national level by any means, but not even in a bigger scale. So this, of course, in the long term, it ends up being an issue for the migrant teachers who are affected directly by this, but also from our educational systems. From SIRIUS Network, we really support the idea that inclusion is a holistic approach. So when we refer to inclusion, we refer an inclusive structure and a whole holistic inclusive structure of the education. So of course, when we look at the different barriers that we identify in inclusive attitudes in school, we see that one of the main barriers is that actually the teacher workforce is not diverse, and we cannot pretend to talk about school transformation just by talking about inclusion, but we need to put inclusion into practice. And that's why in SIRIUS and my colleagues who are here today presenting, we have been for a few months now advocating for a new initiative at the EU level for effectively promote the inclusion of migrant teachers in the European system. And now, after this small introduction, I would like to introduce my colleagues. So we have Michelle from University of Vienna in Austria. Then we have Henrike from Ruhr Universität Bochum in Germany. And finally, we have Rory from Marino Institute of Education in Ireland. And now I will give the floor to my colleagues who will do a presentation on three different cases of international teachers in their countries. And after that, we'll have a section on question and answer. So please feel free to let your questions in the chat, and we will try to address all of them after the presentations. So please feel free to start with the presentation.
Yeah, hello everyone. Also from my end, as Sarah already introduced me, my name is Michelle from the University of Vienna. Today we would like to first present you some insights into, on the one hand, our education systems and how actually the need of introducing and creating programs that enable non-Austrian or non-genuine Austrian teachers actually to get into the systems came into being. And later on, we'll give some 2 or 3 highlights into recent research and intersectional fields that we believe are interesting. I would like to start with showing you this slide of a very complex school system and education system. I'm definitely not going into details, but I think it's really important to see this picture to actually understand how hard it is for a person that has not been socialized or has not gone through this system, an education system, as complex as the Austrian one, that literally starts to function in different ways of focusing on specific topic knowledge, focusing on specific outcomes of educational biographies by the age of 10 already. And it's rather complex to understand how to navigate through the system, let alone also to understand that there's different teacher education systems that bring you into this system. So the target group of the program that we kind of invented and started at the University of Vienna together with the Postgraduate Center was one that is focusing on this kind of chunk in the middle that you can basically see, where we are focusing on children beyond the age of 10 and up to the age of 18 or 19. So teacher shortage is an issue all over the Austrian education system, but specifically within this secondary school education, there is an issue because we are lacking, as in most other systems, also educators with a background in, for example, MINT subjects, mathematicians, for example, etc. So the additional fact is also that for the secondary education, if you want to be a teacher in that system in Austria, you also have to study 2 subjects. So the small field that you can see in this slide also, so on the right lower half of the slide, that is basically the education that you have to go through in order to become a secondary school educator or teacher. So basically, you would have to study 2 subjects and 2 types of subject didactics, and you would also have to go through what we call basics of education studies, bachelor's and master's program, and this is where problems for non-Austrians or those not having studied in the Austrian system or not being socialized in the Austrian system, not having gone through the Austrian school system actually starts, because most of those who arrived during the time of 2015, 2016 only studied 1 subject. It's just a different system, I have to say. So for those highly qualified teachers who came into Austria and into other countries during 2015 and 2016, it was not possible for them to directly enter the school system, apart from having probably specific specialized contracts under not similar conditions to the other teachers. So what we started was basically providing a course that is focusing on the basics of education studies, because we found that the teachers who had arrived in Austria had different subject backgrounds, and we could not focus on only one subject that we wanted to kind of work with them. So we decided to provide a course for the ECTS, Basics of Education Studies, that was focusing on teachers who had been working with children between the ages of 10 and 18. And within 4 cycles between the years 2018 and only recently 2022, we trained almost 100 teachers in this field of basics of education studies, and can now say that more than 60 of them have re-entered the education system in different functions, with different hours, within different school systems, etc. But they have been trained by us in 40 ECTS within almost a year. They did 10 ECTS, that's 250 hours of internship, and we were able to train internationally educated teachers who had a refugee background. Because, and probably this will also be an issue probably later also compared to the other countries, for the Austrian case and the Austrian presentation here, we can say that we were only focusing on teachers who had a refugee background, because there's not so far a program that would qualify migrant teachers. Now handing over to Henrike.
Thank you very much, Michelle. The information Michelle gave us can largely be applied also to the German situation. So there are a lot of similarities between the German-speaking countries, and especially the two school subjects which are obligatory. This is a big problem for internationally educated teachers also in Germany. The situation of internationally educated teachers in Germany is a rising political topic, I would say. However, it's still quite a niche topic, but there are some political papers, policy papers, which refer to this group in terms of supporting them to get into the German school system and re-enter their teaching profession. As Michelle also already mentioned, it's also a similarity between Austria and Germany that the initial and central focus on internationally educated teachers in Germany is strongly related. Oops, now the picture is strongly related to the rising number of asylum seekers in Germany since 2015. This does not mean that there were no internationally educated teachers before in Germany, but there was not really a lobby and there were no real, I would say, interest in this group. There were hardly any chance to re-enter their profession. Since 2015, this has changed. The first bridging program at a university in Germany was started in 2016 at the University of Potsdam, and since then several bridging programs for internationally educated teachers have been established. I will now refer to one of the federal states of Germany, which is in the west or northwest of Germany, called North Rhine-Westphalia, because this is the federal state my university is in, and in North Rhine-Westphalia we have a network of altogether 5 bridging programs called Lehrkräfte Plus network. So Lehrkräfte Plus means teacher plus, one could say, and we are trying to work together to support internationally educated teachers and to support this topic, especially also on university and school administrative level. As you can see in this panel, we also work internationally. I have worked with Michelle and Rory in different projects. 2 of them I just want to mention because they are European funded. There have been 2 Erasmus Plus networks, and you can also find the links in this presentation. One is called Requal, and the other one is called ITTS, and both of them especially focusing on internationally educated teachers. Even though there is political awareness, there are actually several programs now at universities in Germany addressing internationally educated teachers. There are still many barriers internationally educated teachers are facing in Germany. So I would say in a way it's sometimes a bit frustrating that at the one point we have a kind of infrastructure, one could say, but on the other side the formal regulations to become a teacher are very strict, and a lot of internationally educated teachers, just because they have been trained in another country, they do not meet the regulations. So these bridging programs really, at the one side, trying to sort of fill the gaps of these aspects which are missing, and on the other side also working on a, maybe one could say, like political level, trying to address the situation of internationally educators and maybe also, well, change regulations or adapt regulations so internationally educated teachers have the opportunity, or at least the opportunity, to enter their profession again. I would now hand over to my colleague Rory.
Thank you, Henrike. So I'm just going to talk briefly about the Irish context. I suppose when we reflect on the theme of transforming schools into learning communities, what jumps out most is the importance of context. We begin to try to think about what does learning mean in a context, what do communities mean in a context, what does transformation mean in a context, and they all have to be contextually situated. The Irish context is quite particular. In Ireland, traditionally a country of outward migration, only quite recently have we begun to see that tilt in the opposite direction with regard to inward migration. But there's a general concern that the teaching workforce doesn't reflect the diversity of the population, and especially the school-going population. And that's particularly acute in the context with regard to minority ethnicity. Sorry. With regard to minority ethnicity. Brian, Audrey Bryan, a colleague of mine who works in Dublin City University, has quoted another paper which talks about Irish teachers as whisks, or white, heterosexual, Irish-born, settled, and Catholic. In that context, there are only two routes to really diversifying a teacher workforce. One is about who comes into initial teacher education, and the second is about the recruitment of already well-qualified teachers from outside of the jurisdiction. There's very little evidence that either of those is really working to challenge the diversity of the teaching population at the moment. With regard to who actually works in Ireland, only teachers who are registered with the Irish Teaching Council are entitled to be paid from public funds for their work as teachers in Ireland's, we've about 4,000 recognised primary and post-primary school. While there are routes to recruitment in private schools, some PFAing schools, there are very few positions available in these schools. And some public schools might also have some work available that's paid privately, for example, language support, but these positions never have the terms and conditions that are associated with public sector positions. So in order to secure high status, full-time teaching positions in Ireland, you have to be registered with the Irish Teaching Council. Applicants who apply or who are qualified outside of the country apply under the EU Directive 2005/36. The qualifications of these teachers are then assessed by the council, and they're seen to be of a comparable standard, and where there are gaps between somebody's registration or qualification and what might be expected by the Irish Teaching Council, 3 years are given for people to accomplish or address those shortfalls. Now, the numbers of teachers from immigrant backgrounds who've achieved registration through this process have traditionally been quite low. So between 2009 and 2014, we had about just over 17,000 new registrations in primary school, while over 2,000 of those, 2,349, were based on assessments of overseas qualifications. The vast majority of these were from Irish teachers who had attained qualifications in the United Kingdom. Only 138, or less than 1%, were obtained from outside of Ireland and the United Kingdom. That's an important piece of contextual information. The second piece then is about, well, how do people actually get jobs in Ireland? Recruitment into schools in Ireland is most often accomplished through applications to individual schools. We have some collective organisation, but mostly recruitment is done on an individual basis. So that means applications have to be tailored for individual schools. You have to make it clear that you know about the school, refer to ongoing activities, refer to things like sports or involvements in particular competitions, etc. Can help to make your application stand out from others. This is very different than many other routes into teaching in many other jurisdictions, where it's on the process of state examinations or local examinations and being placed. The flip side of this is if you incorrectly refer to something like religious ethos or a gender composition of a school or etc., that's going to put your application in a very poor light and is going to make it more difficult for you to get to the interview process. Our own project was established in 2017, the Migrant Teacher Project. That is to provide a whole host of support, some of which have been identified by both Henrike and Michelle in terms of bridging programs. We've completed 5 bridging programs, traditional bridging programs, and we've worked with some tailored bridging programs for Ukrainian teachers. We have now somewhere over 300 graduates, with somewhere in the region of 60% who've moved into employment in Irish schools. And I suppose in addition to providing the support for individual teachers, what we're also about doing is cultural shift and transforming the actual concept that like nursing or medicine or other line fields, which are heavily dependent and heavily supplied by well-qualified migrants from abroad, that our teaching population might become a little bit more open to those concepts. So I'll pass back to Sarah now for 1 second. Or Sarah, will I just go ahead with maybe I'll just continue on in the context of our.
So we have one question
Sure.
from the participants. So if you want, we can already address it now, or you can continue and do it. Okay. So I believe you already gave a few examples, but they would like to have other examples of barriers that international teachers are facing.
Yeah.
I think that this is an open question for any of you.
Yes, thank you. I can say something regarding the German context, and there are also similarities, like when you look at the research, international research, certain barriers sort of coming up in different contexts. For Germany, you usually need 2 school subjects and the educational studies on master level, which is a problem because a lot of the teachers applying in Germany are from countries where they only have 1 subject, and sometimes they have educational studies, but not always, and some of them have worked as teachers on bachelor level. Then, of course, the German as a second language is a big topic. So you need a C1 to C2 German language proficiency to be actually employed as a teacher in Germany, like long term. There are formal and informal information on how a German school system works, which these teachers do not have, on which they sort of have to learn in these programs. And also, of course, as you can imagine, there are topics which can be summed up under experiences of discrimination in terms of background, but also in an intersectional way of in a combination of gender and migration status, for example, female teachers wearing a headscarf.
I think that's quite comprehensive from my perspective. There are contextual issues in Ireland, but that captures the vast majority of it. Yeah.
I think it's also probably really important to point out that, for example, for this group to join, let's say, regular teacher education programs, usually we would have really high levels of language knowledge. So this is, for example, one of the main reasons why we needed such a program in Austria, because the main idea of them joining regular teacher education and kind of redoing certain courses and certain studies was just not possible because the language requirements were so high. And that also applies actually to the appointment as a teacher then. So because usually C1 would be expected. So most of our courses would then also be kind of linked to German courses, for example, or specific language courses.
The only other piece I might add to it is that we also consider not just getting into schools, but staying in schools and progressing through schools. So recognition, for example, on pay scales of previous work, but also previous experience in terms of promotion opportunities. Those are things that we begin to see as some teachers make their way through the system. We see particular barriers to those experiences as well. So.
Thank you so much. I think it was good to clarify this, since it's really good to understand the basic barriers in order to understand why this is preventing international migrant teachers to continue in the system. And please, Cecile, let us know if this answers to your question, but I think we can move on.
Okay. Okay, so I suppose the next part of what we're going to do, we're going to just break it into 2 different sessions and quickly do some experience in terms of what's going on with regard to some of these programs, both on the programs themselves and out on placement, just to see the type of work that's going on in terms of transforming both the schools in which young many of our teachers find themselves, but in addition to that, also their own lives themselves. So I'm just going to talk about the involvement of stakeholders on our bridging programs. And I talk about, we would have wide-ranging involvement of stakeholder engagement with internationally educated teachers on our bridging programs. The first piece I'd say would be actually in the contribution to when we are teaching and learning and have people together. So I suppose the inclusion of expertise of a wide range of stakeholders is important, both from teacher unions, employers, members of curriculum bodies, other professional bodies, etc. The picture I have up here is actually one from some of our participants with 3 representatives of the 3 teacher unions in Ireland, and teacher unions play a high and important role in shaping Irish education policy, and representatives from 3 unions have always participated at our projects and at our programs and have given quite strong support. Interestingly, it's a two-way street here in terms of learning for the unions as well, in terms of how they might work with, or some gaps in terms of their own policies. So that's something that we've seen to be important, but really strong support from members of our unions. The next image is from a representative of our National Council for Curriculum and Assessment. And in this session, we're talking about the role of assessment, particular forms of assessment in the Irish education system. So plugging knowledge about gaps around curriculum and assessment is an important piece. Importantly as well, this session was held in one of our education centres. So education centre is an important feature on the Irish landscape. They provide high quality professional and personal development for educators locally and regionally, both in physical spaces, but obviously now in the context of post-COVID, support online learning for teachers, professional development as well. And plugging our teachers into these services has helped to work to integrate them into the system. And the centres, the education centres in particular, have been really proactive in supporting teachers, particularly Ukrainian refugee teachers, over the last number of years. The next bit, I suppose, and I've mentioned the important how teachers get jobs in Ireland, but one of the big gaps in knowledge for many internationally educated teachers is about the processes of employment. So I've mentioned previously, in other jurisdictions, teachers compete national exams placed on panels, etc., frequently organised on a national or regional level, but the situation in Ireland is much different. Teachers have to apply to individual schools. So there's a lot of learning in relation to how do you read job advertisements, how do you understand the nuances of available contracts and terms and conditions, how do you prepare application forms, how do you prepare curriculum vitae, how do you prepare cover letters. And one of the key learnings, both from evaluations of the programs that we do, but also from needs analysis as we work with increasing numbers of teachers, is how do we actually support teachers across this process, okay, so that they can show a school that they're not just looking for a job, but importantly in Ireland, they're looking for a job in that school to convince I want to work in this school. So understanding issues like gender, school ethos, location are really important. So on the bridging program, we draw in a host of prospective employers and people who have experience in interviewing skills from our employment bodies, managerial bodies, principals, deputy principals, chairpersons of boards of management, and they come in and spend a lot of time with our teachers. We draw on that support of school leaders and employers, and they are active members who give input on interview preparation, application preparation, and we hold a series of mock interviews so that teachers are properly supported when they go out and begin to look for work. And I have this quotation very briefly, but it just shows the importance of that work in terms of sourcing work, but also in terms of the feedback that they're getting from some of the people on the Migrant Teacher Project. This teacher reflected that they were well prepared for all scenarios that were presented to them over what was a 3-part interview and selection process, which is quite, different than some other jurisdictions. One of the, and my Henrike and Michelle are going to talk about school experience, but I think I just have this quotation here, and I just want to very, very very, very quickly, the importance of school experience is so supportive of teachers. And when they get into a school that works with them, and you'll see this here, that everybody from the cleaner to the principal in the school that this teacher was working in were absolutely amazing to me. And that's a really important way of reflecting on, I suppose, a school community supporting teachers as they begin a journey back into an education career. One of the other pieces that we pay a lot of attention to are graduations. Graduations, we know, are a highlight of academic programs generally. What they do for our teachers is that they offer an opportunity both for themselves to show an achievement, but actually we use them as ways of pulling stakeholders together. So we would frequently have participation from our Minister for Education, and who has spoken at several of our graduations. But we would also have these as opportunities where representatives from a wide variety of stakeholders actually come together and are there to acknowledge the successes of the teachers, but it also helps to kind of move and shift the cultural perspective around who is available to work in Irish schools. You'll see on the picture in the middle here under the Gal Peters map, our minister with some of our graduates from a recent program. The final piece, I suppose, in terms of transformative work that I'd speak to very briefly is something that we've found particularly important, is the development of a school network, or a network of schools who are more formally committed to supporting the career structures and career pathways of migrant and immigrant teachers. So in May 2001, we formally launched the schools network. And that launch was, we had a number of activities, but central to it, we had a teacher who had graduated from a previous program and a school principal of the school where that teacher was now located. And they were talking about the growth, both for the individual teacher as she reflected, but also Billy Redmond, who was the school principal, was reflecting on the growth for that school and the effect of having someone from a visible minority ethnic background working in the school. So in that respect, I suppose it's important to show the buy-in from schools and what it can do when we put those into practice. We also at that case, now I think this is important in terms of working with ministers, policy guidance, etc. But our own Minister for Integration spoke at the launch of that, and was really supportive of what we were doing. The Migrant Teacher Project is funded through his department under the AMIF fund, and he kind of spoke about migrant teachers, immigrant teachers as being key advocates within the education system to promote the benefits of integration and inclusion. And we now would have over 70 the schools registered with us, actively participating, many of them then coming in and participating as part of our bridging programs. So they come and are actively participating in kind of culturally shifting, moving us away from where we would have been in my initial piece there of characterizing our teachers as whisks, but actually understanding the contribution that migrant teachers and internationally educated teachers can make to an education system. I'm going to pass over to my, I'm not sure, Henrike, I think you're going to take it up next.
Yes, thank you, Rory. I could just continue straight away because Rory pointed out the great importance of schools, of course, not only during the bridging programs, but especially afterwards when it comes to the question how to enter the system like on a longer basis. I would just give a short overview over the bridging programs with a special focus on Germany, and the programs which are provided usually include school experience and placement, and these placements are supplemented by mentoring programs. So usually there is one teacher in the school which is a mentor to the internationally educated teachers. And this goes back to research that also when you look at the initial teacher training, that if people enter the school system, it's always of great help if they have like a support system. As Rory already mentioned, it is very important how you get treated, if you feel welcome, if there's somebody you can ask your questions to, and so on. So this was something which has already also been implemented in the bridging programs for internationally educated teachers. We also realized by working with schools in the programs, especially, and also looking at research which has been done or accompanying programs, that the topic of transformative potential is very often focusing on the internationally teachers themselves. So it's a lot about how do they have to change, what do they have to learn, what needs to be done so they sort of fit the respective school system. And this is something not only in this international context, but also on the national level, we are trying to change, because we want to look at the transformative potential for the schools which are taking on internationally educated teachers and give them a chance. So there is current research in this network. I already mentioned the Lehrkräfte Plus network in North Rhine-Westphalia, one of the federal states of Germany, one of the biggest federal states. And this network contains altogether 5 one-year bridging programs at 5 different universities. Each of these programs offers 25 places for internationally educated teachers per year. So it's 125 internationally educated teachers per year, and is supported by the Ministries of School and Science. Like, as Rory also said, this is an important aspect, and we are financially, as well as also regarding this idea of supporting internationally educated teachers, are well supported. I would like now to go on to the research results. Thank you. We did a qualitative content analysis on 18 interviews with internationally educated teachers, mentors, and principals, which are part of these schools we are cooperating with in Lehrkräfte Plus. And we transformed the results of these interviews into recommendations for schools I would like to point out now. It became very obvious that it is important to understand this onboarding process. So the initial starting process of internationally educated teachers entering the schools as part of a long-term professional development process for internationally educated teachers. So it became clear that the school members, internationally educated teachers, the mentors, and also the principals, all together had the hope that this is sort of a process which is which is like a quick and of course hopefully successful process, but in practice it becomes aware that it takes a while. So you have to see this onboarding process step by step. It is for some of the teachers a big change in what they have experienced in their studies, as well as also in their practical work as teachers, and this needs time, especially because all of this is done in another mostly unknown language, German. So this was a first recommendation. You have to give this time, like also the internationally educated teachers as well as the school members. Also important is to clarify everyone's hidden or not hidden expectations regarding internationally educated teachers' language skills. The topic of language is really big, and we all know that this has to do with the actual language proficiency, which is needed to work as a teacher, but also in regards to the discourse on language in terms of migration. And in Germany, the whole migration discourse is very strongly related to if these migrants have enough German language skills to work in different jobs, especially in the teaching profession. There's a strong focus on language proficiency. And for us, as providing such programs, it's sometimes quite difficult, because when the schools refer to the language proficiency of internationally educated teachers, giving feedback that this is sort of not good enough, not enough German. Then it's very difficult for us to sort of, or we really have to go into conversation with them, because this is sort of it's a topic which is so complex that we really have to find out where are the actual problems, because language, as you know, has many different layers, and we really want to go into detail to find out what the actual problems are. Also, what became clear that, and I think people who work with internationally educated teachers know this, there's a great commitment to become a teacher again. Of course, this has many reasons, and we think it is very important that this commitment and the professional as well as the biographical knowledge of internationally educated teachers is used as a potential for school as an organization, and especially the principals, they know this. So if they don't have to, of course, become a partner school in Lehrkräfte Plus, but if they decide to, usually they are quite committed and they see this potential, as Rory already mentioned, for the school as an organization, for school development processes in terms of diversification of the teaching force. And as a second last recommendation, we realized that it is very important that the communication regarding the organizational framework and the mentoring and also structuring the mentoring is very important. This also refers to other research results on the success of mentoring programs, but also became aware in our research that it is very important to be in communication so there are no misunderstandings, especially because the language usually is in German. So for the internationally educated teachers, it's quite difficult to understand all the complex contexts which are talked about in this mentoring process. So this is something which really has to be focused on. And as a last result, we realized that it is of great importance, especially in terms of the feedback of the internationally educated teachers, that this onboarding process is a task for the entire school community. So it's not only about the mentors and the internationally educated teachers, it's about all school staff, it's about the principals, and it's very important that everybody knows who these persons are, that they are internationally educated teachers at the school. And we also found out that if the school members are introducing the internationally educated teachers in a positive way, also the students, they can handle the situation. They can handle a teacher with an accent. If this person knows what he or she is doing in mathematics or whatever subject, the feedback by the interviewees was that this can work, but it needs to be framed by the school community. I would like to now hand over to Michelle.
Yeah, I'll try to come to a quick conclusion because I guess everybody is happy to also hear your questions. Probably my slides kind of sums up what Rory and Henrike said to a certain extent, because for the Austrian case, we unfortunately do not have the system of partner schools. We do have, as I said before, like a 250-hour internship. Sometimes it feels like years for them, so probably that's why I said it. So they have 250 hours of an internship, a whole year, basically a whole school year that they spend in one school during the program. And after that, unfortunately, we don't really have a structure that supports them and helps them finding a school. I mean, we try our best to do that on the side on a voluntary basis, but we unfortunately do not have funding or structure for that. So I think what you two described here is really, really essential, because one of the main findings from a follow-up study that we are currently analyzing is an in-depth focus group discussion that we had with a lot of our alumni, whom we all invited in order to join and share their experiences. And I think it's quite exciting also to see that the findings actually hint to the fact that we cannot see this as a one-sided process. And I think it's also really important to state this here, that we can also not leave the teachers who are already in those schools with a huge task of onboarding without a support process. And we do have a lot of schools who are very open. We have a lot of informal mentors and colleagues who are doing a fantastic job. But I think on the other hand, it's also really important to, give credit to those systems who kind of, integrate or try to also integrate. And I think there's also another issue, this equation of add a lot of, diversity to the teaching force that can then manage a lot of diversity or increasing diversity of schools. It's not that easy, I would say. And we see a lot of research that does not take that into account, I would say. It's not that easy. If you have a teacher, for example, who is a mathematician and he does an excellent job, as Henrike already said, it's not a given that he or she would then be the translator for the rest of the school, because there are many subjects that he or she will not be able to actually translate, because there will be sensitive subjects, there will be contents that probably need a specific contextualization, so it should not be expected of that group. And this is a feedback that we got from the focus group discussion that is currently being analyzed, I have to say. And one of the main issues that everybody within this group discussion actually came up with is the picture in the middle. So you see this picture of ice skates, and you might wonder why it is there. Not because it's particularly beautiful, but because this is actually what it boils down to most of them. They said there was a lot of efforts from everybody to come up with ideas how to integrate, how to make things possible, how to exchange, how to ask questions, how to get to know each other. But in the end, for many, it boiled down to the fact that they were not able to ice skate. And for the Austrian case, it's really important for a teacher to be able to do that. For Vienna, for other places, it would be skiing, but for Vienna, it's ice skating. So unfortunately, most of these teachers have never learned how to ice skate, and it will be really hard for them to do this on the side. And that means that they cannot attend or support any excursions. And this actually takes its toll, because then the other teachers will have to take additional work in order to go with other groups. So there's really, this was kind of an issue where it kind of boiled down to that they feel bad about not being able to ice skate. And I thought it was just a really nice picture and kind of sense of that sometimes I think these struggles around education and integration also can kind of boil down into maybe a simple fact that is taking quite a toll, we have to say. Yeah, I think that's it from our end. We hope we could give you an insight into these 3 countries. Looking forward to your questions, and thank you for being here with us.
Thank you so much, Henrike, Rory, and Michelle, for the wonderful presentation. It was really interesting to have an overview of the situation in your 3 countries. But now, please, I will invite all the participants to write their questions on the chat. But for starting this section on questions and answers, I would like to invite Agnes from ETUCE, who has been coordinating this workshop. And she will give us her perspective from the European Trade Union Committee for Education on the perspective of teachers and other education personnel at the European level. So please go ahead, Agnes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And really, I warmly welcome the cooperation between the SIRIUS Network and the ELNE Network. As ETUC is one of the lead partners of the ELNE Network and we are members of the SIRIUS Network, it's very nice to see this collaboration. I was very happy to hear about these examples and also cooperation with the teacher trade unions. But I would like to have a question concerning one comment which one of you had at the very start, that your research would like to see a future development of a kind of European Union policy on integration of migrant teachers. And this is very important. It's very important to support refugee teachers. It's very important to have broader access to the teaching profession to ensure its diversity. And it's very important to attract teachers to the teaching profession, but it is very important also to ensure what is the purpose. And what we can see now, there is a European policy development concerning how to fill in, how to answer to the shortage professions of the European Union, which are many. One of them is also teachers. And what we can see in this new initiative of the Skills and Talent Package, it tries to answer to this, not mentioning at the same time now teachers, but we as teacher trade unions, we are quite afraid that as some countries are already headhunting nurses, bus drivers, welders from other countries, instead of focusing the human rights approach to support refugee teachers to have their integration to the job market as teachers, and instead of really supporting those professionals who would like to be teachers, there will be a massive flow of brain drain, not only within the European Union, as it is now from east to west and south to west and north, but also from other continents. And what we see that the skills-first approach is not really appropriate, because what the Commission document is saying that those who cannot fill up the qualification requirement, they should offer short-term job, temporary job, assistant job. And we think it is not fair. We think that those who would like to be teachers are either EU nationals, non-EU nationals coming from another country, should have fair recognition of qualification, should have training to fill to meet the high qualification requirements of the countries, and to have quick recognition and to have every support in order to have the same equal status, equal pay and equal working conditions as those who are EU citizens in the home country and gain their qualifications based a traditional way. So my question is, if you are considering, and I'm very happy that we are talking now about also research-based policy making, because you are doing a lot of research and you expect that there will be a policy on that, what would you suggest to the member states to do if there would be an EU policy? And if there would be an EU policy on migration of migrant teachers, how do you think that this policy would need to respect the high quality teachers, high qualification of the teachers, and also to avoid huge masses of brain drain?
Maybe I can start. Thank you for your question and also the perspective, which is very important. I can refer to a study which is done by one of the largest teacher unions in Germany. It's the GEW, and they did a research looking at the different federal states of Germany under the topic wasted opportunities, quotation mark. And within this study by the GEW, they are very strongly pointing out what you just mentioned, Agnes, that it is important to change, like in this case, it's on a national level, but to change the actual the framework, the recommendations, what is needed, not by lowering the status of the job, but by giving people which are well qualified, but different qualified, the chance to adopt to the German system. So, of course, it's not about lowering expectations and quality, but to create like stable paths towards this job, because this is a big problem. I can say in the German context, there is a lot of interest in integrating international teachers, but there are no stable structures. So for these teachers and also for the schools, if they want to employ these teachers, they always have to take like, I don't know, go like different paths or create some kind of path to handle this. And this is not a very good situation for everybody. So I would say to extend this on a European level, we really have to look for good, stable structures. And also then in this context, focusing on what you mentioned as so-called brain drain. We have some examples from the Commonwealth context with these recruiting systems for teachers, and this caused quite a few problems. So I think we have some examples where we can learn from, not to do these mistakes again, which have already been done.
Yeah, I suppose I would. Sorry, can you hear me? I would just add on that as well in terms of the protection of the rights of workers in the Irish system. So I'll speak about that in the context of nurses and medics. Yeah, we are seeing an absolute brain drain in parts of the Philippines potentially, or parts of India, which are supporting, overwhelmingly supporting the medical system and the nursing system in Ireland. But I think it's really important, and we know this from our work with our own unions, where they have learned how they need to respond to supporting the migrant nurses, or in our own case, our migrant teachers, to develop their processes to make sure that those concerns are brought into negotiations in terms of central bargaining and that. So I think it's refining or tuning into those needs as well, and having those, and that only comes in through their participation in unions, their engagement with unions, they're feeding up through their democratic structures. So there's learning on that. Like, education isn't a shared competence, and I think we're, that's fine. So it is going to still rest at that national level for a lot of this, but what we're trying to do is to raise awareness about it. Migration between member states, to teachers from Poland moving to Ireland, and recognition of that, but not just resting there, and recognizing that people with 20 years teaching experience in India or the Philippines or Brazil or Argentina or whatever have something to contribute, but it is done from a perspective of social justice, talk about human rights, or whatever lens we take to it, but one that's not seen as exploiting those teachers. One of the reasons why we have an issue with education or teacher supply in Ireland is that we have an issue with teacher retention, because so many of Irish teachers are migrating to other countries to make money. So this is a two-way street as well, of course. And then there's plenty of other jurisdictions that have built their whole education systems on teachers who are trained overseas or internationally. Australia, increasingly New Zealand are two examples of that. England, the UK, parts of London, 60-70% of boroughs there or teach schools in certain boroughs are being supported by teachers who are trained outside of the UK. So it's a massively complex system, but I suppose our perspective on this is that it is about protecting the rights of those individual workers, but as migrant workers. So yeah.
And probably just to add one more thing, I think it's also a huge issue actually to what we see at the moment is that we have, one school, and then you have in Austria sometimes 7 different contract types. So with lateral entrance now, for example. So I think also among the teaching force, I think this is something we really have to take into consideration, because everybody's doing really hard work. Everybody's highly qualified, maybe according to, different backgrounds. That's all good. But then I think we really have to come up with an idea, because I think it also causes some additional workload to kind of cope with this, sitting there with a colleague who maybe has the same amount of training but earns, I don't know, 1/3 more or something. So I think this is also from the perspective of unions really important to consider.
Well, thank you so much, Agnes, for the question, and also to my colleagues for their answer. And I think it's really important, you all highlight that it's not about lowering the status, but creating sustainable pathways for migrant teachers that are fair for them, but overall for all teachers, because as we can see, many of the issues who are suffering migrant teachers to be included in the system and to continue in the system are similar issues to the to the national teachers are also facing, and in many cases is about underfunded systems and the lack of funding in education. So yeah, I think it's really important that we all get together to advocate for this. And I think we will close the session with this question, because I believe we answered to all the questions and we arrived to the end of our session today. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Etuche, for coordinating the session and inviting us. Also, thank you to the Educational Leadership Network as well, and many thanks to my colleagues for the presentation. Hope to see you all soon. Bye.